Hi, I'm Becky and I'm here to show you how to use the new multimedia bag dies from Crafter's Companion. So the first one we've got here are the box style bags. So they come in 3 different sizes. You've got the very small one, you've got a medium sized one and a large one, and these have a strap as well, so they're nice and easy for you to carry. And as with all of our multimedia bag dies, it means that you can cut multiple layers of fabric when you're popping them through your die cutting machine. You'll get your dies which look like this. These are they're copper coloured dies, and that's how you can identify whether these are multimedia dies as opposed to paper craft dies. And you'll see that you get 3 different shapes, 3 different sizes of the actual bag, and then you get this sort of square shape here, and this is for the pocket. So very simple for you to do, and you're going to be getting a booklet in there that gives you all the information in here. Now these are slightly different from our normal bag making dies in that you will also need to cut a strip of fabric to form part of the bag, and that's the same with all of the new bag making dies that we're going to be showing you. So if I open up my booklet, you'll see it gives you very detailed instructions as to how many of each thing that you'll need to cut out. So for example, the main panels would be these sort of large shaped pieces here, but it also talks about the gusset and the zip panel, and these are just rectangular pieces of fabric, so we don't have a die for those. It's just a case of you measuring those out and cutting them yourself. But with your pocket panel, you'll use one of these dies, and they're different sizes depending on the different size bag that you're going to be making. And we've given you step-by-step instructions as to how to put everything together. So when you're using your dies, you'll use them in the same way that you would do normally. So you'll need to check on your manufacturer's details as to how you're going to put your sort of sandwich together. But if we were going to be using our Gemini, ideally I would use my fabric plates with these. So I use my clear plate, my metal fabric plate. I then put my fabric down, my die, then the metal fabric plate on the top, and then the clear plate on top of that, and then put it through my machine. Now you'll notice that this die has a little space here. This is because your fabric is going to be folded up. You'll see that that's how the piece looks when it's been cut out. So my whole piece of fabric would have been folded in half. I would have placed the die here and then cut that out, and that means you'll get a whole piece like this, rather than just a half piece of the shape of the die. And this is the same for all of the bags and also for the pockets you're going to be using as well. After you've cut out all your bits and pieces, you will have 2 pieces of your outer bag which has got some interfacing in. So depending on the kind of fabric that you're going to be using, you may or may not want to use interfacing and wadding to give the bag more structure. If you're going to be using something like leather, you probably won't need anything at all, but for cotton you'll definitely need some interfacing and possibly some wadding as well. So this is iron-on interfacing, which I ironed onto my fabric before I put it through the die cutting machine, so it was nice and simple to put together. So you have 2 pieces of the outer bag. You'll have 2 pieces of the lining. I've just used plain white fabric here, but you can use any kind of lining that you would like. Then you have 2 pieces of lining for the zip pocket. Then you have 2 pieces of the outer fabric with the interfacing attached as well, the same size for the zips. You will also cut 2 pieces, 2 little square pieces, like so, and these are to be putting on the edges of the bag where you're going to have your D-rings, and so we're going to fold those up and iron them and then sew them together. You will also have your gusset for your bag. So this is the piece that isn't cut like the zip panels. They're not cut from a die, they are just cut by hand or cut with a rotary cutter. Once again, I've put interfacing on this, and you will have a piece of lining fabric for that as well. Then you have your large piece of fabric to make your strap as well, which is all going to be put together, and you'll get your pocket as well. So this again has been cut out of my lining fabric and just using the die for the pocket. Then you'll need 2 zips, one to go around the whole of the bag and one for the little zip pocket. So we'll start putting the bag together. The first thing we're going to start putting together is the zip panel. So we have the 2 pieces of the outer fabric, with the interfacing, so 2 pieces here. We've got our zip, which we've already cut to size using our zips on a roll, and we've also got the fabric for the lining as well. So we're going to start off with 1 piece of the outer fabric and 1 piece of the lining fabric. And we're going to place the fabric right side up, and we're going to take the zip and place that right side down. We're just going to line up those 2 strips, those 2 edges just here. And then we're going to use our lining fabric, and we're going to place that on the top of here, and then we're going to pin all of these together and then sew them to create the little zip panel with the zip enclosed with the lining. So I'm using my quilting clips here. These are really useful if you're going to be doing the bags, because you're going to be holding lots of things together. You can, of course, use pins, but this is definitely easier if you're going to be using sort of multiple layers of fabric, or if you're going to be using something thick like leather to make this bag. And I'm just going to start off by sewing back and forth a couple of times just at the start of this panel. Now, as I'm stitching along, I'm getting to a point where my little zip pull is just there. So we don't want our sewing machine to go over that. So I'm going to make sure that my needle is in my machine and in my fabric, like so. And then I'm going to lift the foot up. And then I'm just going to pop my hand underneath, and I'm going to get that little zip pull. And I'm going to very carefully just pull it out of the way. You might need to give it a little bit of a wiggle just to get it moving. So just going to move it out of the way so we can carry on stitching our zip. So we've now stitched that together, and you will see, if we just move that zip along, if I fold this over like so, you've then got your outer fabric here, your zip enclosed in here, and your lining fabric here. So we're just going to give it a bit of a press, and then we're going to do the other side in exactly the same way. So you can see that there. And then we're going to do the other side. So once again, we're going to have the fabric right side up. We're going to put the zip and the other panel right side down. And I will just move that zip somewhat in the middle, just so I can pin everything together nicely. And then we're going to put the lining fabric on top of that, match up those edges as before, and then run it through the sewing machine. So once we've put that all together, it will look like this, and I've just stitched, top stitched all the way down. This just means that it keeps everything nice and flat, keeps everything out of the way, and it was nice and tidy, so it means the teeth will not get caught, or the fabric won't get caught inside the teeth of the zip. So that's your first part of your bag made. The next part are your D-rings, or the little straps to go on the D-rings around the edge of the bag. So if I show you what I mean, the bag looks like this. So this is one of the smaller ones. And we've got these little straps here, these little tabs that hold these D-rings here. So this is to enable you to put a strap on these. And you can see they're just made out of the same fabric, but they form part of the bag, so they're stitched inside, so they're nice and secure. So very simple for us to put these together. So you take your piece of fabric, which is a couple of little squares, and we are just going to fold over around about 1/4 inch on each side, fold over again on the other side, and then fold these into the middle. So you create a little piece like so, and then we're just going to top stitch on either side of these folds. So you'll get 2 little pieces that look like this. So they will, you'll have this sort of open side as the back side of it, the rear of it, and this is the front. And then when we pop our D-rings on, this will be sewn into the bag, and the D-ring will hang out of this part here. So we're now going to produce the piece of the bag that goes around the outside, so this piece here. So this is made up from the zip panel and the gusset over here, and we're going to make sure that we install these little tabs these little pieces of fabric here in order to hold onto these D-rings. So we're going to take our zip panel face up, and we're going to take our little panel like this, and we're going to fold it like so in half. And we're going to put those two raw edges together. And then we're going to place this other panel, this gusset, right side down, and we are going to put these in place. Now you could give this a little stitch by hand just to sort of baste it in so it doesn't move, or you could just pin it really well. So we're going to do that with this side first of all, and then we're going to make sure it fits around the actual body of the bag before we sew up the other end, just in case we need to trim any of this off. So when you go to your machine, use your normal 2.5 millimetre stitch length, and just be a little bit careful when you're stitching over the actual little the zip and that little panel, because you're going through lots of layers of fabric. So just be really gentle. So if you're a bit concerned about stitching over the zip, you can just move your needle through your machine by turning the handle at the side of your sewing machine, which is really quite useful if you're going to be going through multiple layers of fabric. So you can see I'm doing that here just to go over the zip and that little extra sort of tab panel. And then you can see you've got your little tab attached here, and you've got your zip and this panel together. So I'm just going to make sure that this fits all the way around this bag piece. Once you've made sure that everything matches up, we're just going to stitch around this side as well. So we're going to pop our little bag tab, this little thing to hold onto the D-ring, we're going to pop that in as we did before, just about here, raw edges together, right sides together, and we're going to give it a clip. Now we've put that all together, we've got the two little tabs here. Now we're going to then clip it against the actual bag body. So obviously we did that earlier on just to make sure that everything matched up, but we're going to do this a little bit more carefully now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this panel in half. So this is a zip panel, and I'm just going to give it a bit of a squeeze here. Now when I put my bag panel through my die cutting machine, I had a little bit of a fold here, which you can still just about see. I haven't ironed that out deliberately because I want to use this as a mark as to where the middle of this bag panel is. So I'm going to do that with my zip panel so I can see that just this part here is halfway through. And I'm going to match up those two sort of halfway points on the zip panel and on the bag panel, and then I'm going to clip all the way around before I sew it. So I'm just going to stitch around the bag now. I'm going to make sure that I'm very slow with stitching around these curves. So don't rush, just take your time. So then we're going to turn the bag the right way round. So if you want to, if you're using some thicker fabric, you may just want to clip the edges, the corners of these to make it lie flat. But then you can see we've got half of our bag ready with the little tabs on either side, ready to put the last piece together. So now I'm going to pop the zip panel onto this part of the bag. So we're going to be using our Threader's zip insertion tool. Now if you don't have one of these, you can do everything by hand. You just need a ruler and you need to follow the measurements inside the instruction manual. But if you've got one of these are really useful for you to be able to put this together nice and simply. So I'll show you how I'm going to go about that. So I'm going to open up my lining fabric from my pocket, and I will just fold it this way round. I'm going to be using my 4-inch zip, sorry, 6.5-inch zip, which is this one here. So you'll see on the zip insertion tool you've got a square, and then you've also got almost like, looks a little bit like a bone shape down here, and that's to show you where you're going to be cutting things. But you've also got a ruler at the top. So we're going to measure at the top here 3/4 of an inch, and I'm using my heat erasable pens here. I'm just going to mark that there. And then I'm going to just put my zip insertion tool, so I'm going to draw around the rectangle and I'm just going to line up against those sort of 2 points there. So I've got it a 3/4 of an inch below the top of this piece of fabric, like so. And then I'm going to move up to this shape here, which is a bit like a bone, and I'm just going to draw the little line with the 2 kind of arrows at either end. Now I'm going to take my panel for my bag, and I'm going to measure down 1 inch from the top edge. Again, I'm going to use my heat erasable tool and heat erasable pen, just going to mark that there. And then I'm going to place my pocket just against those 2 pieces here. Then I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch around this outer box around here. So I'm not going to touch this line in the middle, I'm just going to stitch around this box here. I am then going to use my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut along this line here, and then when I get to these corners I'm just going to snip into each of these edges over here. So I've cut the line across here, and I'm going to snip into each of these corners like so. I'm going to snip that little corner away just because I think it makes it a little bit easier when you're folding everything back. So be careful not to cut your stitching. Cut that little bit away. And then we're going to post through our pocket lining through this gap. So it's effectively a little bit like a letterbox. Now this takes a little bit of fiddling around, making sure it's nice and straight. And this is where you're definitely going to be needing to iron so everything's nice and flat. So I'm going to put this through this little hole here. And then put the top part through as well. Turn it around the other way. So it's going to look like this. Now I'm going to give this a press so it's nice and flat before we start doing anything more. So I've given this a press, and now I'm ready to pop my zip in. So I'm going to put my zip facing upwards, and I'm just going to lean it over the top of this little gap. Make sure it's in the right place, so sort of evenly apart from in that little gap. And I'm going to use a couple of pins to secure it in place. So once it's in place, I'm going to use my zipper foot to stitch all the way around the outside of here, and then that will secure that in place. Once that's been done, I will then flip it over, and then I will fold up the pocket, and I will stitch down the sides here, and then also this part here. So you need to sort of fold the bag over and then just stitch this piece here. So your zip panel will look like this from the outside with your zip here, and then on the back that's how that will be finished off. So you'll see a little bit of your lining fabric peeking out, but then when you open the zip into the pocket, you'll find the pocket is all secure inside here. So now I've finished adding the zip panel and the gusset to the first part of the bag. It's now a question of adding the piece that we've done before with the zip pocket. And we're going to do it in exactly the same way. So I'm going to fold this over so I get a mark where the middle of that is. I'm just going to find my heat erasable pen and mark it with that, just there. And then going to do the same with the zip panel. So what I would do, I would need to sort of fold it over like so, and then we'll get the point here and give it a mark. So the zip is done up at the moment, but in order to turn the bag around, I want to undo the zip all the way before I sew this other panel on, and I'm going to do it in exactly the same way as I've done before. So right sides together, clip it all the way around, and then sew. Once again, you can trim around the corners of the bag if you need to, and then we are ready to start putting the lining together. So we're going to start by putting the lining together now. So we've got the 2 pieces of lining on for the bag body here, and then we've got this piece for the gusset. And as you remember, we've already got the lining pieces for the zip panel already attached to that already. So it's just a question of putting these together. So again, we want to find the center points of the bag panel. So great that we've still got these marks, these fold marks for where we put them through the die cutting machine. And then we just need to find the center point of the bag gusset. So I'm just going to give this a quick iron just to make sure I've got a nice sharp crease. Now we're going to put this together the same way as we've put together the rest of the bag. So we're going to line up those two center pieces just here, clip around the edge like so, and do it all the way across to here, and then do the other side. When we put the other side together, we're going to leave a little gap of about 4 inches. So we've got a bit of space to turn everything through. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start clipping that together. But it's done in exactly the same way as we've done the rest of the bag. So we've sewn one side of this together. Again, you can cut around the curves if you want to. And then we're going to put the other part on here. Now, because I'm using a plain fabric, it makes it nice and easy when I'm using the lining. But obviously, if you're going to be using patterned fabric, make sure that all your everything's facing the right way. Now, what we do need to do is leave a little bit of a gap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it with my heat erasable pen so I know where to start and stop my sewing. So again, I'm going to put my bag together, put the two center points together first of all. So I've now sewn my lining together with a little bit of a hole down here for turning out. And now it's a question of popping that into my bag. So you can see at the top, this piece here is going to be attached to the lining piece on the zip panel. So we're going to go on and do that next. So I've turned my lining right way out. So this is the part which is without any of the stitching. So you've got all the sort of messy side on the inside. And then I'm going to place it inside my bag. So my bag is inside out. My lining is right way round. So basically we're going to have two right sides together. So we're going to put that inside. So the right side of your outer bag is touching the right side of your lining. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time making sure that we've got the lining in the right place inside the bag. And we're going to fold in the zip panel, and we are going to place the lining, the edge of the lining, this is a curved side, around on it. So this is the curved piece of the lining, and we're effectively folding this over this zip panel, and we're going to attach that to that and sew it all the way around and then turn it inside out. So we're now going to stitch around these curved edges here. So we're going to stitch this side like that and then this side like that. So not all the way around, just these curved parts. So we've now sewn all the way around these curved edges, and we just need to sew up these two parts here. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time putting these pieces together. So we're going to match up the lining with this side seam here. So again, use your clips. This can be quite thick, especially if you've used wadding in your bag. So be careful as you stitch that together. Now what I will suggest you do is, you can see down here my zip pull is quite close to the edge here. I'm going to move that up a little bit, otherwise it's going to be a little bit tricky to sew that together. So do remember to do that. Be aware of where your zip pull is when you're doing this, because whenever you're sewing over the zip or close to the zip pull, it's going to be harder for your sewing machine to stitch. You just want to be a little bit careful. So we've now stitched everything together, and we're going to then sort of turn everything around the right way. So remember, we've got this little hole in our lining, and we're going to put our hand through that, and we're going to pull our bag through that hole. So this is where you need to make sure that you had your zip open and you had that little gap in the lining. So we've now got the bag out, and we're going to pop the lining inside the bag. We need to give it a good press and stitch up the hole inside the bag. Now all you've got to do now is make the strap to go onto the bag. So here is your strip of fabric that you're going to use for your bag. The measurements are in the instructions, but of course you can make it longer or shorter if you wanted to. So if you fold it right side down, and then we're going to fold in about 1/4 of an inch all the way along on both sides, here and here. And then after that, we're going to fold into the middle. So if I just make a mark in the middle here, you can see what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do this along the whole of my belt, my strap. And I put that to the middle here, like so. And then this one, like so. So you've got these two pieces together, and then fold it over like that. And then I'm going to stitch all the way across on my sewing machine. So your strap will look like this once it's been put together. So you're all ready to put it onto your swivel hooks. Now on this particular bag here that we've got these little swivel hooks as well as the matching D-rings. So the strap is just put onto the D-ring or onto the swivel hook and then folded over and then stitched to one side. So you could do it like that if you want one of those swivel hooks. Or alternatively, on this bag that we've got here, we've just used a simple D-ring and we've just put the strap onto the D-ring just like that. So again, you can do that if that's what you prefer to do. So after you've given them a good press, you are ready to go. And here is your large, medium and small box style bags, all made in exactly the same way, just using the slightly smaller dies inside the pack and smaller zips as well. And these are all from Threaders by Crafters Companion.